Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, we're going to explore the idiom Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law simply means the worst possible thing that could go wrong does go wrong. Okay, so let me give you an example of what I mean. Okay, so imagine you leave the house without your umbrella, and suddenly the rain comes and you get absolutely soaking wet. You might say to yourself, oh, isn't that typical? It's just Murphy's Law. Here's another good example. Imagine that you are late for work, you jump in the car, you quickly start the engine, and then you find yourself in a traffic jam and you're going to be late anyway. That's Murphy's Law. Another good example would be if you win the lottery and then you drop dead the next day, your family might say, oh, isn't that typical? Isn't that just Murphy's Law? Something goes wrong, which stops you enjoying the moment, or in the case of the traffic, you're late anyway, but you get stuck. There's a famous song which highlights Murphy's Law, and that's Alanis Morissette when she sings the song Ironic. Some of the lyrics in that song, they say things like, it's like rain on your wedding day. It's like a free ride at the festival, but you've already paid. You know, a free ride on one of the machines, like the big wheel or one of the arcade games. You paid already, but in the end, it's actually free. That's typically Murphy's Law. In that song by Alanis Morissette, she goes on to talk about other examples. She says things like, it's like the man who's afraid of flying, and on the day that he does eventually fly, the plane crashes. That's Murphy's Law. Alanis Morissette doesn't call it Murphy's Law. She calls it irony. She says, isn't it ironic that these things happen? But in British English, it's very common to use the phrase Murphy's Law. So you could say, oh, isn't it ironic? I'm running late and then I get caught in a traffic jam. Or you could say, oh, that's great, isn't it? That's just Murphy's Law. Alanis Morissette gives us loads of examples of Murphy's Law. In fact, the song is all about Murphy's Law, although she's using the phrase ironic, isn't it ironic? But it has exactly the same meaning. Ironic and Murphy's Law are synonyms. Okay, so she says here, a no smoking sign on your cigarette break. And then she says, a traffic jam when you're already late. It's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. It's meeting the man of your dreams and then meeting his beautiful wife. Yeah, she gives some lovely examples of Murphy's Law. Speaking of Murphy's Law, yesterday I was making bread and I was rushing to get it all finished because I had a class. And I cleaned myself up, I was rushing around, got to the computer, and then of course the student didn't turn up. Isn't that just typically Murphy's Law? Isn't that ironic? You go to all that trouble and then in the end it wasn't necessary. That's a good example if you're looking to use the phrase Murphy's Law. It's unclear where this phrase came from, Murphy's Law. I just assumed it was Irish because, the name Murphy is Irish, and we often make jokes about Irish people and things that happen to them because of the culture here, which laughs at Irish people through jokes, through media, but it's not. It's nothing to do with Ireland. Apparently, it was to do with some experiment that took place many years ago. But there's many different theories about where the phrase came from. So yeah, if you listen to the song "Ironic" by Alanis Morissette, you get loads of examples of Murphy's Law. So it's just typical Murphy's Law that I make the podcast and then find I can't post it, for example. That's another example of Murphy's Law. Speaking of Alanis Morissette, she used to have an advice column in The Guardian here in the UK. Someone who gives advice about relationships and friendships, they're referred to as agony aunts. So she was an agony aunt in one of our British newspapers. It was fairly short lived, though. I don't know how long she was on there exactly, but it wasn't long. I don't know why they gave her that opportunity. I thought that advice columns, as they're known in American media, or agony aunts, as they're known here in the UK, I didn't think they were popular anymore. I thought they were out of fashion. But anyway, she had an advice column, or she was an agony aunt for The Guardian. That was in 2016. So things have all changed anyway after COVID. But very interesting. I just don't know why she was doing that. Anyway, yeah, she got married to the rapper Mario Soul Eye Treadway. I've never heard of him. They've got three children: Eva, Oinks, and Winter. Can you imagine having the name Eva? Oh no. um, I suppose he will suffer with a name like that at school. Um, yes. Although Americans tend to have different names from British people. British people rather prefer more traditional names, but in American English you can hear all kinds of creations, like Brittany, for example. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Oinks was another one of her children, and Winter. Hmm. Anyway, it seems that Alanis Morissette is still singing. She very recently released a song called No Return. I haven't heard it. In fact, I haven't heard of her at all since her release of Ironic. Uh, yeah, she had a podcast as well, didn't she? Conversations with Alanis. Do you remember? That was from 2015, where she spoke to a number of guests about different things, usually about relationships, spirituality, etc. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why she got the job in the Guardian as an agony aunt. Uh, that podcast is still available, but I don't think she does it anymore. I'll need to check. I'm not sure if that's only an archive now or if she still does it. But very interesting. Yeah, I see she's been acting as well. So that's interesting, isn't it? Although she's not someone I would recognize. I mean, for example, if I saw Alanis Morissette in the street, I wouldn't know who she was. To use an idiom, I wouldn't know her if I fell over her. Yeah, yeah, I have no idea. Oh, it seems that she suffered a lot with depression and eating disorders. Oh, that's sad, isn't it? She's had a bit of a difficult life. Um, yeah, it's not been kind to her, it seems. Um, yeah, yeah, she's done quite a few things, it seems. Quite a few things. I didn't realize that she was Canadian. Um, that's very interesting, isn't it? Whenever I go on YouTube, there's always images and video clips of drones operated by Canadian men, and they're always looking at how trees and bushes are changing from green to orange. I don't know who would be interested in that, but there seems to be many Canadians on YouTube with their drones showing us how trees are changing color. Maybe in Canada that's a big thing. Yeah, so she's Canadian. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. And now she's a naturalized American. Yeah, when people change countries, I mean politically, when they get a new passport, they're referred to as naturalized. Sounds like a really bad facial cream, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah, she's been naturalized into America, so she's holding a passport for America as well. Do you remember I used that phrase yesterday in my podcast about David McCallum? He was a naturalized citizen because he was born here and he ended up living in America. Did you know that in Canada they have a national dish called poutine? It looks like a kind of French fried dish. It looks like chips basically, but they go crazy for it. You can get it in McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken over there. It's like chips with a meat-based gravy with um, some kind of white card on the top. No, they go crazy for that. They even have poutine festivals throughout the cities. Oh, it doesn't sound nice, does it? Um, yeah, they also have this thing called butter tarts, and it's like a cake with pastry, and it's full of butter, sugar, syrup, eggs, and raisins. Well, it's off my list then, isn't it? And it's cooked until it's crunchy. It's like a kind of dessert. I'm looking at a picture of it here. It looks like a British mince pie. You know, those really sweet Christmas pies we have. We call them mince pies, but it's not beef mince, it's fruit mince. Yeah, yeah. And of course, they're famous for maple syrup, aren't they? Yeah, I'd imagine Alanis Morissette has tried maple syrup before. It's very famous all over the world. I like maple syrup, but it's a bit expensive now, isn't it? I mean, it was never cheap, but these days, maple syrup, which comes from the maple tree, is is very expensive. Apparently, Quebec in Canada produces 85% of the world's maple syrup. That's interesting, isn't it? 85%. Who would have known that? That it all comes from Quebec. Oh, Canada's an interesting country. I'd like to go there just to experience French Canada as well as the other bits. Would be nice, wouldn't it? Anyway, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this. So let's talk again soon. See you. Bye.